Shut up and sit down.
Well, hello, everybody, and coming to you live on Saturday morning. You might have noticed that this is from the intro. This is the Pigskin prick and not the pricks. Unfortunately, the other day, after taking Wednesday off due to the events at the Capitol, the pricks decided to postpone our normal Wednesday recording. But unfortunately, on Thursday, Joe communicated with the rest of the pricks that he was quitting social media. So he would no longer be doing the show. And I want to say that I respect his decision. He wanted to focus on his family. And I don't want to really say anything more about that other than I respect it, because I think any other questions really should be addressed by him. And obviously he could provide any other comments or clarification, in the comments of this video. Evan also just didn't feel like two pricks was the same as the three pricks. And I totally understand that. In fact, I'm doing this video now on Saturday morning because I really had to think about if I wanted to proceed and how I would want to do it. Whether I just do simply, a couple of shows of just some slides and picks and what have you, because I just didn't feel like we ended the season the way it should be ended. I didn't think we ended our show the way we should end it. We left some things hanging, and it just made me feel uncomfortable about that. Really, for you, the viewers, I know, how our last episode went and what the results are, but some of you may or may not know where we're at. Plus, I really wanted to kind of pick the games through the rest of the season to get to the Super Bowl, really finish what we started prior to the season, where we all made our picks and projections well before the season started on the teams not only in the playoffs but who would be in the Super Bowl. And those are alive for many of us still, to see that potential as far as Joe, Evan, and I. So I want to continue to highlight that and just kind of see where we end up. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Normally we do our, tier rating, and because it's Saturday morning, it just doesn't make sense. I could have gave you my monster rating, but I've already finished that, and here we are. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into as we normally do. We cover, we do this presentation that just kind of displays how things went. One of the things we really hadn't talked about or finish off was our playoff standings. So we finished obviously the CBS league. We didn't none of the pricks made the playoffs. In the NFL league, Joe finished that league last week, winning it. I got fourth place. But we had the ESPN league, which was really strange because it's the first time I ever played a league where in the playoffs you played each player 2 weeks in a row, or each opponent 2 weeks in a row. And the total of the scores for those 2 weeks determined the winner. And here we are. So you remember last week I was up by 50-some points. Joe's older brother, John, Deal Lofton, Ohio, made a really good comeback. He was never projected to win, but there were moments when I was concerned. As you can see, Derrick Henry had a really good performance throughout these last 2 weeks. So did Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Interestingly enough, Josh and Stephon didn't really play the second half of their game last week, so both of our scores were a little lower because of that. I actually had to go pick up a player to replace, which was Alexander Madison, to replace. My brain just went blank, like you guys know it does. Minnesota's starting quarterback, because his father died and he was out for that game. And it made a big impact, obviously, 29.5 points. I'm glad I picked him up because I won by less than 20 points. So obviously that, if getting the wrong player there, could have cost me the game. Another thing that I found was really interesting is actually the first place and second place teams, myself and John, were actually outscored in the first week of the consolation by the third and fourth place teams. But if you see now, I was able to squeeze ahead of them. So while I didn't have as good of a week as Deal did, both of us had outstanding weeks, and that I got ahead of everybody for the 2 weeks. So I feel kind of as a solid champion, being able to outscore everybody. And Deal made a really good comeback after being down so badly. He had a really good week. Unfortunately, he just couldn't get 2 weeks back together. So Again, I feel good that the Pricks, definitely showed up. Didn't have a great CBS league, which is our first draft, our NFL league. Two of us made the playoffs. One of us won it, and in our third league, which was a bunch of family and friends, one of us made the playoffs and was able to win that as well. So 2 out of 3 leagues, Pricks won. Pretty cool. So our season standings, we only had one game left. Obviously, I won. Evan actually won as well in the ESPN league, even though he was in the consolation ladder. Joe lost his game. In fact, he didn't even really play some players. He kind of let his team go and got beat pretty handily, so ended the season with a losing record. Evan just squeezed above 500. Both of them were at 500 last week. We did do some parlay picks last week. Remember, if you remember, we had a special guest on the show, and my headphone was acting weird, so I don't know. So again, our parlay picks, we had a special guest, Harrison. So as far as our parlays, none of us got a perfect, which is pretty typical for our season, including Harrison. And I put a question mark because he actually picked 3 games and added a fourth. He added Pittsburgh, so I'm still going to give him a negative. He really kind of picked 4 teams. He was picking both Pittsburgh and Kansas City because he just didn't know which one. So how do you give him a win? Because he didn't really solidify in either one, but he missed the Kansas City game. And it's a bummer, but I didn't feel good about that game he did. He did nail the Pittsburgh game. That was actually rather impressive that Pittsburgh played so well against Cleveland with Ben Roethlisberger out. So anyway, for the season on our parlay, we all got another loss. Did pretty poorly overall. I didn't put Harrison. I guess I could have, but he would have been 0-1 for the season. So we did do a bunch of picks last week. We picked every game, and this, in many ways, was it was a lot of fun. We talked about it, but 2, it was a chance to give Joe and Evan a better opportunity to catch back up, being that they were behind. Actually, Joe was behind 4 games for the season. Evan was behind, I think, 10 or more. So I submitted my picks first. I emailed everybody my picks. Then I got theirs back. Kind of interesting because Joe and Evan didn't include each other when they emailed back, so they kept their picks kind of independent. And in the end, while I was up 4 games, I kind of emailed the guys back that they still didn't have a chance to catch me because Joe only had 3 games different than me. And of those, 3 games different, but he was down 4 games. Evan, I think he only picked 2 differently than me, and we'll look at it here in just a second. Let's see here. Here's 1, 2. Yeah, he only picked 2 games differently, so he was so far behind. And again, at that point, not mathematically. Of course, we have the playoffs now. The other 2 Pricks, Evan and Joe, aren't with us, so we don't know. But if you can see here, I had the best record, and interestingly enough, 2 of my 3 that I missed were picks that all of his Pricks picked. And the third one I missed, at least one other Prick picked with me, happened to be the Miami Buffalo game. And that is a game I didn't feel great about anyway. I picked Miami just assuming that Buffalo wouldn't play their starters. Unfortunately, they did play their starters for the first half and got so far ahead. And then, to be quite honest, even without the starters, they continue to just destroy Miami. The silver lining for me was that I know Joe had picked Miami as his dark horse to make the playoffs. And the silver lining to me was that while Joe might have got that game, Buffalo had taken Miami out of the playoffs. So Joe's pick didn't hold water. Not that we all nailed that exactly, but it's that one little silver lining. And at that point, that was still early in the day. As you see, it was 1:00 game. Joe was at that point 1 game ahead of me for the week. But unfortunately for him, Ev lost the Arizona pick, and Arizona also lost the playoff opportunity because of that. Then Joe picked Kansas City, and while I respect that because, that's a homer pick, and we know it wasn't a very solid pick, he missed it. The Chargers, in the end, beat Kansas City pretty handily, though it was a pretty close game early on. And then Joe picked Philly over Washington, which we all thought was interesting. He's been a big fan of Washington throughout the season and their defense. And some could argue, if you've seen this game, Philly pulled Jalen Hurts, their rookie quarterback that they started playing a couple weeks ago, over their starter Carson Wentz. And Philly was down, I believe, 4 when Philly pulled that quarterback to put in a third-year quarterback, I believe. I don't even remember the guy's name, to give him an opportunity to show what he could do. And that would make sense typically in a game where there's no chance of winning, like you're down more than, say, a couple scores. And I could see maybe 10 to zip. Because Washington defense pretty solid, but it was a 4-point game. The first snap for that quarter, or the first drive for that quarterback, I think either the first or second play, he threw a pick, pretty bad throw. The second drive for that quarterback, he fumbled. He got a bad snap, but most veterans, I would say, would have recovered that ball. Wouldn't even let it hit the ground. He was not ready for it. It hit the ground. He did not recover it. Washington did. And I'd say at that point, put the game away in my mind. I was actually shocked. I had told my wife, Diana, that I didn't think that Philly would put that quarterback in again. And Jalen Hurts stood on the sideline kind of just shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. And they did. They continued to play that quarterback. So there's a lot of speculation that Philly purposely lost that game either to kind of screw New York Giants, which you see won to basically make it. So they had the tiebreaker over Dallas. So that would have given them opportunity to make the playoffs. Actually, they had the tiebreaker over Dallas and Washington. If Washington would have lost, the Giants would have won. So there's a lot of speculation of that, as well as I know the guys had mentioned that they felt that Philly was also using that to get a better draft pick. And I'd say they both seem legitimate. And they used this third string quarterback basically as a guise, especially when he played so poorly. And they were in a position to win the game. While it wouldn't have not mattered for their playoffs, it did matter obviously to Washington and the Giants. And I think it was really poor form. So as you can see, I ended with 13-3. Joe got 12-4, and Evan got 11-5. So while this was an opportunity for the other two to make up ground on me, in fact, it ended up being an opportunity for me to widen the gap yet again. So for the season standings up to this point, and this is the last standings that we'll have with the guys included. If I decide to do additional shows, which in my mind right now, I'd like to finish the season. I'd like to get to the Super Bowl and make that pick and do that last show. But for the rest of the guys, they're still mathematically in it. There's 6 games going into the wild card weekend, which is today. And so, you use that number. Yeah, Joe's 5 games down. There's 6 games. If you were to pick at least 5 differently than me and get them all, then he'd be in it. But I think we can see the writings on the wall here in that it's rare that they pick that many games differently than me. I pick who I think is going to win, and it's hard to pick against that because it's usually the favorite team or the more likely win. I really wish I had the guys' picks because I'd love to see where this ends up. I think, Evan, we could all rule out at this point. I think mathematically it's not possible. We got 6 games this week for the next, so that's 10, then 2, and then the Super Bowl, so that's like 13. So it's not even possible for Evan to win, though he's got a really bad chance of catching Joe. Again, Joe, while he mathematically looks like he has a chance, I think we all know that it's not possible based on the fact that there won't be that many games that we pick differently. So, because I really wanted to finish the season making my picks, I'm going to continue to do that. So this is Wild Card Weekend. We got on the left-hand side Saturday's games coming up here at 1 o'clock. We got the Bills versus the Colts. I went with the Bills. I think everybody's going with the Bills. The experts in general are picking the Bills. The Bills have just come on the last half of the season really strong. There's talk about them being contention for Kansas City, and I think they're going to be a good team. But I'm a homer. I don't think Kansas City's going to lose to them, but they are a very good team. While the Colts are pretty good, their defense is pretty strong. Their offense is really not that strong, and that's where the Bills are a little more rounded on both sides of the ball. They just got a better, set of receivers, more weapons on offense, and their defense is still very strong. So I definitely give it to the Bills. The next game for today is the Rams versus the Seahawks. This one I have a really hard time with. They're not favored. The Seahawks are favored, but some experts are picking the Rams. I'm picking the Rams because their defense is solid. They did not play well against the Seahawks last week. I think this is interesting that this playoff weekend, we get a couple teams playing each other back to back. And this is one of those games, but the Rams won earlier this season. Even if they go with their backup quarterback, I think that they've now had a couple weeks in a row and they had a chance to face the Seahawks and really get a good feel for them. I think they're going to break that tie and get the third game being a win for the Rams. So I'm picking them, but I picked this very close, and I won't be shocked if the Rams lose it. I really won't be shocked, but I had to pick one, and that's who I felt better about. I could definitely see Joe picking the Seahawks here, and Evan. It would be hard to say. He might go with the Rams. He stuck with me with the Rams quite a bit. Um, but after last week, I could see him picking the Seahawks as well. So we'll see how that shakes out. And then there's the Buccaneers and Washington, and I'd love for Washington to win this game. You guys know I'm not a Buccaneers fan, but one thing I've been is realistic most of the season. I think that's why I lead into picks. I don't let my heart lead as much as I'd like to, though I do occasionally, right? Um, so we got the Bucks and Washington. While the experts do believe that Washington will put up a good fight because their defense is very strong, Brady and company not only have a good defense, but an extremely good offense, a much better offense than Washington, and a defense that's not quite as good, but good. And Washington's offense is just bad. Even though Alex Smith is playing, and it's awesome that he's back, just because he's next Kansas City player and really suffered a tremendous injury and to come back is just something in itself. So hopefully he has a good game and he gets comeback player of the year, but the Bucks are going to win, and I think they're going to win handily, 7 points more. The next game coming tomorrow, we got the Ravens and the Titans. This is another tough one. This is one that a lot of people are picking the Ravens, and I can see why. The Ravens have really played well lately. But if you remember last year, the Ravens and Titans faced each other in the first round, and the Ravens literally the Titans literally ran away with the ball and the game. And I think that's going to happen again. If you've seen, Derrick Henry's been strong the last few weeks, just running over everybody. And I think that continues. Their defense is just terrible. However, I live in Tennessee, though a little further away. The weather sucks right now. While the Ravens have a pretty good offense and a pretty good defense, I think it's going to be a running game kind of day, and that will help the Titans because their defensive backfield is even more horrible, but stopping the run, while not great for them, is going to be a little easier because they got now more people in front of the ball instead of watching it go over their heads. They're going to see it in front of them. But we'll see. This could, again, be a game that I lose. Joe, I think he would pick the Ravens here, and I think Evan may as well. Though Evan's also been a little back and forth on me. Remember, we picked the Ravens to make it pretty far, and they've just barely got into the playoffs, being a wild card where the Titans won the division as I projected. Oh, sorry, let me go back one more time. We got another couple games. So we got the Saints and Bears. I don't think there's much to say here. Bears barely made the playoffs. Like the Washington football team, I mean, the Bears went 8-8, so the NFC just kind of weak. And they made the playoffs, but they're not going to beat the Saints. The Saints are very strong. I picked them to win their division. I picked them to play in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Well, they're going to have a tough road ahead. Again, the Bucs are a tough team. There's some good teams here. It's really. And the Patriots would be another good team that if they have to face them, that would be very good game. But I think the Saints got the Bears easy. Again, 7 points or more. The last game is a repeat of last week where we got the Browns versus the Steelers. Not only do the Steelers have Ben Roethlisberger back, but the Browns have lost coaches and players to COVID. This is just, they got till 8:15 tomorrow. So do they get anybody else back from that? I don't think it's going to happen, but if they did, I still don't even think it's enough. The Browns, while they won last week, barely won against a backup quarterback and had all their players for the most part. They had their coach. They had their players that are now on COVID. So I think the Browns just are going to lose 7 points or more as well. I don't think this is going to be very close. Yeah, mainly due to COVID, but even if they would have been fully healthy, I would have gave the Steelers a 3-point game. So just to recap where the pricks picked, who we picked and where we stand for the playoff race in the AFC. Put our pictures, but now everything's locked in. So now's the time to solidify. How did we do? Right? How did the pricks do in looking at who was going to predicting who was going to make the playoffs this season? I'm going to move my picture out of the way. I think we did pretty good. So we all picked the Chiefs to be the leader, and they are. And the Steelers, again, most of us missed them. Joe nailed it, and they clinched the playoffs and even lost last week, just like the Chiefs did. The Bills were very strong, and a lot of us talked about the Bills. Um, Joe liked the Bills to give, even though his pitcher's not here. We've talked about it. He picked the Dolphins as a dark horse, and to point out to everybody, we didn't pick all 7 teams to make the playoffs, even though we knew there were 7. We picked our favorite, and we sometimes try to avoid the same team if we felt there was another strong contender or we wanted to go with the dark horse. So, not that Joe wouldn't have picked the Bills; he liked the Bills, but he picked Miami as a dark horse. And as you see, the last time we pulled this up, they were in. They were in, and they controlled their own destiny if they could win, and they did not. They lost to the Bills, um, and they fell out of the playoffs. And the Ravens, who Kevin and I picked to win their division, though they didn't, they did at least make the playoffs. So, you know, two teams, Miami and the Patriots, Joe and Ev picked, didn't make it. Again, we had honorable mention for the Broncos, but we never said they were going to make it. So I think the Pricks did a pretty good job of getting, really, if you look at it, we didn't pick the Browns. But other than that, every team that made the playoffs, somebody from the Pricks chose as a playoff team. That's pretty good for picking teams before the season even starts. So the NFC, we had something, we didn't do too bad as well. We missed one, no, two. We missed two, and we talked about this. Cowboys, and they were close. All they had to do was win their game last week and get Washington to lose, and they were in. They couldn't do that, and the Vikings just continue to fail. They lost week after week. Though I think they won their last week. I can't remember. It didn't matter. They couldn't contend, and they did not make the playoffs. So the Bears, nobody chose. Definitely won it. We again gave honorable mention of the Giants being a dark horse, but we didn't really pick them. They had a chance. Nobody picked Washington. We actually made fun of Washington, and Joe did like their defense, but we just didn't like them. We also didn't pick the Rams. We liked the Seahawks. The Seahawks made it. We liked the Bucks. Well, a couple of us did. They made it. Evan, Joe liked Arizona. They didn't make it. Right? We as a Pricks, we didn't do nearly as good with the NFC, and I think the NFC was tougher. A couple of ones we did do well on. Again, Seahawks, Bucks, Saints, and while nobody picked the Packers to win the division, at least I did mention them as a wild card team. However, they not only clinched their division, they clinched the number one spot and a bye in the playoffs. They just really did well. We didn't expect those receivers. So that's the end of the picks and the show. And I just want to end with really, I've appreciated the opportunity to do this show. Had a lot of fun with it. I do want to talk briefly about the events on Wednesday. I'm really disappointed. I'm really angry about it. I'm really saddened by what happened. And some things that bother me about it are the fact that folks talk about it as America's disgrace, and I don't feel that way. I think some people are a disgrace. I think the people that invaded the Capitol building and the people behind them, urging them to do it, namely our president, are a disgrace to this country. And I think the rest of the people and the majority are not a disgrace. If you watch any of the news stations, the major news stations, or simply saw what both Republicans and Democrats had to say about that, it was the majority that felt that this was a disgrace of the people who performed these actions, including the president. I don't think America as a majority is a disgrace. I think it's a lot of good, hardworking people. And we were all shocked by this. And, if you really look at it, and I don't have a whole lot to add, it's just more commentary. As you're looking at things have developed, this was not something that was normal because, like, where was the security? And I remember watching this on TV. Where's the security? Where's this, DC National Guard that's supposed to be there? Why is there so little security? I've been at these facilities because of my job. I've actually been to the Capitol and buildings around there. And I've been in a situation where they've locked down and had more security than they did on this day with a lot less going on. So it's shocking, and it really pissed me off. I had the feeling that there were some things in the background because of, you know, the city of DC, or the sorry, it's not even a city, the district of DC, and it is under the executive branch as far as government. It's so would be, the National Guard. Um, those folks behind the scenes had something to do with that, and the lack of it. What made me very happy was the fact that, and that's a hard thing to say, happy, but truly, is the lack of bloodshed. Um, I was worried that it would be a bloodbath, and in many cases, it would have been, except for people behind the scenes and the fact that of what type of Americans these were, that more people didn't get shot. Um, just think if it was an invading country or a different group of folks, this could have been very, very bad. That could have been a disgrace to the country, and how this went down and reacted. Instead, it was, the silver lining is it shows who these people are in a way that you can no longer deny. You can be one of them that still supports them. And the beauty of this is now look around for you everyday folks in the US and look for any of those continued Trump flags, signs, bumper stickers. You now know who they are. You still should be concerned and you should watch them. This is not over. But if they're still supporting that group of people and that president is on his way out, and we all know it, whether he gets um, just replaced, if he gets impeached, if he just gets, goes away, because we all know Biden won the election, and even he now is stopping to lie about that. He's gone, but you still got to watch these folks, and they are a disgrace to this country. But general Americans are not, and we should be proud of the reaction and what's happened since then. That folks taking their pictures in the Capitol building against the law are losing jobs and getting arrested. And there's more to come on this. And again, the bright side is now we know, in a way that people like me might have already worried about, and thought this presidency is not a good thing for America. But now it's so clear that I think it's going to wake some people up that were on the other side of the fence, like the Mitch McConnells and, a lot of Republicans that were on his side for so long, and a lot of his supporters. So I'm sorry to use this as a political outlet. That's not the goal, but I did want to mention, A, because it happened, and B, because it interrupted our show that we normally plan. And we need to acknowledge and respect the folks that were doing their job and had it interrupted, that I wanted to make that part of this show and speak out about it. Again, thank you for watching. And until next time, peace, everybody.